anyone out there. And I want to go back with now in the second part. I had to change a bit with the lightning. So, because in a way, the knowledge of the sun and the changing light circles has been something that humanity tried to understand for a long time until scientists found out how and why the sun changes. And shortly after that, we entered an era in human history where sacred art like a chapel painted by contemporary artists has become something that is not seen very often. And I want to pose the question to the whole podium. Whoever takes the microphone first gets the first answer. But I want to ask everybody of you, do you personally think, or if, let's say, a church asks you, can you produce an artwork for our temple, for our mosque, for our church, or a spiritual gathering place? Would you consider this an interesting endeavor, or would you say, no, I will not produce work for religions, spiritual institutions, or the like? So.
So the question, like, if I would be interested?
Or let me rephrase it for a second.
Do you think that the religious works are still something that still an interesting endeavor for contemporary art?
I will answer the one before. This one is phrased a bit too arty for me, but I think that if a church or a mosque or a synagogue would ask me to do a work there, I will be there in a second. Only yesterday I've been to Linz, and there was a work at the cathedral there, and I was just amazed. I don't think where I come from it would be possible to actually put an artwork in a religious place. I mean, with the acceptance of the place. Not that it's like an underdog kind of act, but it was, for me it's like everything else, that it's supposed to be inspiration to make art. So religion is also, for me it's the same as looking at the, staring at the sun, or walking on the street and see, stuff that are growing, or it's how can I explain? It's an element that it's just like any other thing for me to work with, or to be to relate to. That's how I see it. Also, in my work, I see a lot of influence from religion and from culture, and how they are maybe where they meet, the places that they meet, or the places that they are becoming opposites. And that's it.
And now I'm going to pose a question to you.
Yes, I would also do that. It sounds like a pretty good challenge, and I can already imagine how I would love to work with that context, with that certain context of that certain church. I would agree to any religious author, I don't want to offend right now anyone. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with everything she just said, and it feels like a growth also for myself, or like a challenge for my own construct right now. So that's a good question. Yeah, I would do that.
Would you also say yes? If let's say the largest New Age organization in Europe asks you, make a work for us, or would you only say yes for specific organizations? I'm quite interested in your answer.
I still play with the idea of founding my own cult. So maybe that's a possibility. Then what if the Church of Satan asks you? Would you do that? Would you still do that? They produce a lot of new stuff, I heard. And New Age, sure, it depends what they want. I don't know. I mean, the church always was a big, played always a big part in the foundation and emergence of artists. So, where I come from, the Catholic Church works with artists, or started to work with artists again. I don't know, at a certain point I left. I don't know if they would still ask me. Do you need to be part of the church to make works for them?
I think from my experience is that some churches might require you to rejoin or that you have never left, but then there are also some churches, meaning the church, at least Europe, gives very large ability to the priests to say you can basically ask anybody to come in, because there's also part of the ecumene that Tony Faber could ask anybody to make. They could ask imam and a rabbi to come into the church and do a joint event. So I don't think that it is completely out of the question for the Catholic Church to ask Sunni artists or Sephardic artists to do something inside of the walls. But it still, I think it depends on the priest. But also then, I'm not a church. Oh my God, that would be an awful word. But if I was church, but still, I don't know how they regulate that.
I made a work for a shopping mall of an art public space, a huge dream catcher, 9 meters in the center of the shopping mall. I think shopping malls are definitely kind of churches. I mean, we in German have even the name Konsumtempel, you know. So, been there, done it.
I wanted to ask, is it the priest that like he's the commissioned one? It's not like God supposed to invite us to do the work?
But since God does not have a purse, how could he reimburse us? Maybe in the next life. But then, what if God can't remember that he asked us to do an artwork, and when we are at the gates, he tells us, or she tells us, sorry, I never commissioned this piece, you're going to hell. So, I don't know, maybe it's a demiurge up there, or it's empty, sold out, only some pieces of paper left, and the whole of heaven is empty. Maybe God moved to Haiti or wherever where you go nowadays. So I don't think God is I think maybe God is in Dubai, but so I don't think that God is a good commissioner. I'd rather have the money right now. So I think I'd rather have a priest that is hated by God to give me a commission than God to give it to me, because I will never receive reimbursement, and then I don't know if I ever get it after I'm dead. So I'm going to pose the next question, this goes back to a critical remark about artistic research in the first minutes of this talk. In which way do you think you could interrelate your own artistic production, your own art, with, let's say, with a center, like an institution like NASA, or Center for the Protection of Wildlife, or a scientific project that tries to find new ways to make acrylics or something like that? Which way do you think you could work as a speaking person, or because if you do something for a church, you put something inside of the walls of the church. You have to do something that somehow relates to the church. Or maybe even not, but even maybe then you could do something completely out of line with, like if a research center asks you, please make a work for us. You will find a place where you put it, but we need you in your project.
When did the word, okay, I'm doing this, now I'm working on a project, and of course I'm researching, and for what I do, I have a subject of study that I work for a project, and it's like I said before, it's very wide, and it's it spreads, and each element leads me to the next, and it's they can be totally disconnected from each other. It's kind of like a stream of consciousness, but why does this research, does the word research is so, why does it need to be scientific? Why can't I research the stuff not for science? That's my question.
I think in art, nearly everything should be possible as long as it follows a set of ethical rules. Let's say, I think that's the only limit in art, the ethics of it. But then even ethics is a form of epistemology. You have to know how you interrelate with the world to even know what ethics are. And I think we just had an epistemic shift in regards of nature and how we interact with it. We had artists in the 70s, 80s, who worked solely in plastics, and nowadays people would say, how can you do this? This is destroying our nature. Please go back and rethink your whole artistic production, because maybe use oils instead of acrylics or something like that, or maybe use a different fabric. So I think that's the only thing that art might rethink the question of what is allowed and what is not allowed. But other than that, I think art is pretty open. If I make a slash like that in my painting, or I do a dripping painting, or if I throw the camera inside of a well and it drowns, and then I show this. But that's just my personal response to your question. Now I'm going back to the question that I asked you. I'm going to ask you, in which way can you see your work as a representation or inside of a commission for a research institute or something like that? Would you say I would really try to find a way to represent them, or if possible, I would just produce a work that is directly in line with what I would have produced if they wouldn't have asked me. Like, let's say if you have the 16 chapel, you could also think, like, what if the church was not existent? We have a absolutely 100% rationalistic outview of the world, and there was no Catholic church who asked him to produce the 16 chapel, but it was NASA. And instead of God giving his hand to you see, he would have painted an astronaut holding on to this rocket ship. But
now I have a moment also of the self-reflection, because I don't know if I'm, like, I think I'm self-centered, because I will definitely not the only thing about, I am not really sure if I would think about it the first place of the representation of that institution, whether it's the place of the gods or NASA. I would think how I would put my own imprint inside, and like what I think of that construct of that institution. So I love to work with the context. So I love to contextualize. That's why I also did, for example, that chocolate thing. And I would rather use the representation in my own way, that I would express actually my world, let's say, point of view. But then I would still keep it very, maybe on a surface level, more clean, that the institution likes the representation. So I like to, when I work with any work, I like to work with more layers, how to read the artwork. So there are more kind of I put I play around with the symbology and with the keys, how to grasp the work. So I think, I guess I would have to work with the representation object for that institution, but I would definitely do it on my own way and really on my own rules. So I don't know if I properly. Yeah, I would contextualize it definitely with the contemporary. So I think.
Karin, if you would get the full access to the whole NASA archive, and they would actually ask you, please produce either a painting or video for us, analyzing your symbology or just doing what you want to do with our archive, which actually, as you might know, all that you are listening, the whole NASA archive is completely free to use for any artist. So we're gripping some ideas here, so infecting your young artist minds to do works with the NASA archive. No, I'm not. I'm just asking a question.
So I have access to the whole NASA archive, and they want to do me an artwork. And I reject. I want access to the secret space program. I want full disclosure and open access to intergalactic communication and the telepathy program.
But what if they have very, very bad scientists in that program and they never wrote anything down? And they also never made a backup of any of their videos and photographs. And since the last president was not quite a very scientific person, they never found out that all these scientists for these interdimensional, galactic, interspecies breeding programs, that, as you might know,
That's right.
yeah, they never recorded any data. They actually never went to the bureau and ever worked the whole day in their life. They are all now sitting on the beach drinking daiquiris on government money. Would you need to then re-record the possibility for their videos and photographs, knowing in the full truth that it could have been possible that these images existed at some point?
Of course not. I would go and sit with them at the beach and drink cocktails. What would you do, Patrick? It sounds like you have a vision here you want to tell us about the NASA and your artistic practice.
I think I would ask the very scientists, these amazing fictional, non-fictional entities of scientists at the beach, that we can make an impromptu exhibition, and I would twist the tables and I would make the scientists into artists, just like artistic researchers have tried to find an in into the world of science. And I would force them by not giving them the proper daiquiri mixtures, and I would say you only get the daiquiris if you also become artists. And therefore all scientists would slowly erode and become also artists. Or would that be an awful thing to think that all scientists are now suddenly artists, like they were at 2 documenters ago.
Maybe we should just swap, like with all the scientists we become artists, and all the artists will become scientists. Right?
And I think now I can pose a good question. Do you think that artists could learn something from the scientific rigor of scientists that have to wake up at 7 o'clock, drive for 1.5 hours, and sit in the lab and do the work every day? Because, as we know, definitely not us, we before artists, we always wake up at 7 o'clock and we would work at least 9 hours a day, never taking 1 hour off, never drinking daiquiris in the sun, and we just work with the full rigor of people who know that every second lasts, and we have maybe this brush stroke, this click on the computer will change our worldview and also the view of people regarding art, or not?
I try to understand, Patrick, where you come from, like in creating this image of the artist as a super reliable and working person. And I remember you forbid me twice today to bring anything drink related. But and now all this daiquiri, this is provocation. And I brought something actually. I brought holy water from the Holy Land.
Oh.
Holy water from the Holy Land.
Oh, I thought it would be 2v60.
And actually Lee brought the Holy water.
Oh, wow.
You want to drink back? No, so that's the new flask. I brought the Karin flask. So in case of emergency.
Yeah, spiritual emergency, moral emergency, demons.
One question.
I feel I have the power now.
No, you
Yeah,
have
you
the
have,
power.
of course, you have the power.
If it is magical scientific water, what would happen if somebody would mix their colors to do an oil painting with it? Would it transcend the 16th chapel?
Maybe also parallel. Maybe also parallel from the parallel water. I mean, just to be sure.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Maybe we should all drip something on our faces so we'll all see the scientific light even better.
What about the champagne that you brought? Can we
What
open
about
it
the
or it's not
champagne?
allowed?
Are we pretending it's not here?
Yeah, I see. I recognize an error.
Can't compute.
2 equals 0. Database does not match. I think I have been reconfigured from the scientific outlook to an artistic outlook, and therefore I will say do as you will.
Oh my god.
That should not be the whole of your law, but it's still now it's acceptable. So would you think of painting with holy water like this? Because this now we need to use to sanctify the parallel vapor.
To reply, I make it in a descriptional way. So there is one art prize in Slovakia for painters, and it's always the painting like very like painting like not really. There is no really place for experimental painting because it's like the commissioner is actually the bank. But I mean, I like that prize. It's okay. It's a good prize. But there was one when I was sitting with a lady from the foundation, and she was telling me about some applicants. Once she told me that there was one where that the painter, that the artist, didn't use the holy water or water, but. Or no, it was my friend who told me that. Yeah, that my friend who teaches at the academy, and also I think his student, something like that. So she used for painting instead of the water, like the cabbage juice. Yeah. I don't know if I replied. I think yeah. Yes, cabbage juice is also sacred.
And in Scotland, they call whiskey ishkabaha, the water of life. And this might not be whiskey, but it's still a fermented juice, similar to the juice that your colleague used. And I think now we might all join in drinking magical fermented fruit juice that might not be the water of life, but it might be the water of joy, or of joy of science. Subjective science. This
yeah, thank you. This is is that like a cabbage juice?
And with this last sentence, I'm going to conclude this talk. Probably the most joyous and funniest talk, and I hope all of you have learned about the possibilities and also necessities to laugh, which is directly related to science. As we all know, dopamine production. Smile more, and you might produce better science and better art also. So thanks a great lot.
Yeah, thank you. fun. Love it.
Thank you.
Science can be fun, as we've learned now.
Stop
Goodbye.
it. Let's